3 months later? The season opens skipping around in time, and now this episode opens with 3 months later. I don't know why it's throwing me off so much, but that was definitely a shocker when the episode started. But Bishop and Torres, and McGee and Gibbs, and Fornell finally getting justice for his daughter, this episode was jam-packed. The episode begins with tension between Gibbs and Vance. Gibbs is still determined to find Fornell, but Vance is making Gibbs give the case to the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration. But since Gibbs was able to find a way that the drugs were related to NCIS, the NCIS team was able to keep the case and continue to track down more clues. This element definitely added more urgency to the matter, since the team only had 72 hours before they didn't have control over the case. The scene where Gibbs finds Fornell in the plane hangar made me laugh. It seemed like little boys just chasing each other around and yelling at each other. It was definitely funny to watch, and I love that at one point, Gibbs doesn't even flinch when Fornell shoots at him. Finally, Fornell reads Gibbs in, and then Gibbs reads the rest of the team in. I thought it was hilarious that McGee thought Gibbs had a secret girlfriend. Doesn't he know that Gibbs and Sloan are already kind of a thing? I love the Team Ellic interrogation technique that happened in this episode and last episode. If we're not leading up to something massive, I'm gonna be super not happy. Next week's episode seems promising though, but I'm getting ahead of myself. When Bishop and Torres were interrogating Rico's bunkmate, there was a moment when the bunkmate asked,
"My Navy career is over, isn't it?"
And Torres responds with,
"Man, you messed up. You gotta be held accountable."
It got me thinking, is this gonna be some kind of theme? In the most basic sense, it's talking about how Merriweather and his daughter are going to jail after they've been caught, they mess up, and have to be held accountable. Or is this referring to how Gibbs shot McGee? I don't know if Gibbs necessarily messed up, but he's definitely going to be held accountable if McGee dies. Even though he might have saved him from the bomb on the plane, he still shot him. Or is this just a throwaway line that I'm reading way too much into? Nah. We also find out in this episode that Chad Hamilton, Vladimir, is a bad guy, which I totally called, but he doesn't really last long in this episode at all. But let's get to the big talk of this episode.
Bishop was kidnapped.
So my thoughts. I love how Torres and Bishop were kind of flirting while he was going up to the house.
Keep talking, you'll be walking home.
The writers are totally setting us up for something. That whole scene where Torres was trying to plant the bug was intense though. I'm not a huge fan of how Torres turned his back on Vladimir. I feel like a trained agent like Torres would have known to keep the bad guy in your sights at all times. But when Torres and Bishop saw Fornell,
Is that Fornell?
the tension escalated. It was great that Torres was getting so upset that Bishop was kidnapped.
What do you want to thank your car for that for now?
Like, of course he would be. I mean, they're in love, right? But there was even that moment when Fornell told Torres,
Go get your girl back.
I was like, oh my gosh. Yes! If the moment when Torres was trying to plant the bug was intense, the moment that Gibbs had to shoot McGee was even intenser. Intensest?
I've heard it both ways.
It was so respectable that McGee wasn't going to back down, even if he was getting shot at, and even after he had gotten shot in the arm. But that moment when he went down and was like,
Oh, help me.
you don't even know McGee, he's saving your life. The fact that Gibbs had to shoot McGee to save his life is such a crazy pickle to be in. On one hand, you don't want to shoot your friend.
McGee stayed out.
But on the other hand, your friend can't keep going. What a predicament. I thought it was interesting though how later on, Bishop was low-key not happy about the fact that Gibbs didn't seem more affected by the fact that he shot McGee. But then we see Gibbs at the hospital. Obviously he cares, and I think the audience knew that as well in the moment. Bishop was probably feeling defensive of McGee and mad at Gibbs for not being more concerned. But I didn't really like this conflict between Bishop and Gibbs. The audience could tell that Gibbs was upset. He was running with McGee after he got shot, and he showed up at the hospital later. And we know that Gibbs isn't good with the emotions. Maybe Bishop is just getting fed up with Gibbs' lack of emotion. This might be the start to tension between Gibbs and Bishop though. I don't know if I'll be a huge fan of that conflict. I don't want conflict between my favorite characters. I was a little bummed that we didn't get more butt kicking from Bishop. I don't think we saw enough of her to actually worry about whether or not she was going to live. I never really felt like she was in any real danger. But at the end of this episode, I was like, dang, McGee might actually die. We were all wondering how Sloan was gonna leave the show, and now McGee might die. I never felt that Bishop was ever really in danger. So I was really excited to see Bishop kick some butt and get out of the situation or something crazy like that. But we see a 10-second clip of her beating up one guy. And the way that she was revealed to be alive, she literally just comes out of nowhere. We didn't get any time for Torres to be like, man, Bishop's gone. Because she literally just appeared out of nowhere. Apparently she was hiding in the hangar, which got me thinking, why didn't she just come out sooner and warn McGee to stop running? We know based on some promo clips for the next episode that she knew there was a bomb on the plane.
I knew there was a bomb.
I'm assuming she could hear the sniper shot sounds from inside the hangar. But then if she had come out to warn McGee, the writers wouldn't have been able to put Gibbs in the impossible situation that he was placed in. With all that said, I wish we could have gotten more of Bishop kicking butt and maybe some more suspense when it came to whether or not she was going to live. All of this accumulated to the team finally catching Merryweather. I know he has a real name, but it was only said like once, so I'm just going to keep referring to him as Merryweather. He was just hanging out with his daughter and the team just arrested him super casually. Fornell did drop an awesome line.
Guess now you know what that feels like.
Obviously a parallel between Fornell and Emily and Merryweather and his daughter. I was expecting more pizzazz and grandness when it came to taking down Merryweather. It did seem like the storyline was rushed in these 2 episodes. Maybe it's because of the time jump. I don't know why the time jump was needed. Nothing really happened during it. There wasn't any new information that was presented that happened within that time jump. I'm also not sure if they're working toward COVID times or post-COVID times, because I've heard TV shows are acknowledging COVID as a past thing that happened, but now have moved on and like rebuilt. So maybe that's why they had the time jump, to move us closer to COVID. It just felt like a lot of stuff happened really quickly and ended not very spectacularly. But maybe that's what the writers were going for. They wanted something more chill. I personally would have loved more action though. Despite all of that, I enjoyed this episode and it definitely had me entertained. I know next week's episode is probably going to be when Bishop and Torres finally profess their love to each other based on this video released on the NCIS YouTube page.
I wasn't just fighting for me, I was fighting.
But who knows, they might just prolong it even longer. I enjoyed the Merryweather Fornell drug dealing storyline, even though in the beginning I was totally against it, but then it got interesting and then I wanted to know what was going to happen. I wish we could have seen Bishop beat up more bad guys and just more of how she escaped. It seemed a little too, ta-da, she lived. I loved how Gibbs was put into this impossible situation and is going to have to deal with whether or not McGee might live. And the build-up between Torres and Bishop better lead to something in this next episode. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode down in the comments, and I'll see you next episode.